Greetings and salutations. I want to talk a bit about playing the cards that you were dealt, which basically means accepting the position that you grew up in and making the most of it, doing your best to utilize it. This is because a lot of people have the mentality that because they grew up disadvantaged in whatever kind of way, that they're not going to make it, they're not going to be successful, life's not fair, all of that kind of stuff, right? Now I'm going to use a Fortnite reference just because I think it's a good reference. It actually makes a lot of sense. So if you've played Fortnite before, you know that obviously you're on the battle bus and you fly somewhere on the map, and depending on where you land, there may be some good loot, there may be some rubbish loot, and obviously the whole point of the game is to be the last man standing, right? So there will be some people who land, I don't know, at a good house or a good location and they get the best loot. Fantastic. And there will be other people who land somewhere that's completely deserted, they've got nothing, they feel like they're gonna die because the cards that they were dealt were rubbish. So naturally you would think that the person who landed at the better location has got medkits, shields, all of that kind of stuff. You're gonna think that they're obviously gonna win the game, right? They're gonna come first place. That's not always the case. That same person who may have been dealt, I don't know, maybe they got a rubbish gun. They may be at a disadvantage, yes, absolutely. The person with the best loot has technically a higher chance of being successful, but that doesn't mean that's always the case because it's all about making use of what you've got. That person with all the best loot might play the cards that he was dealt absolutely terribly and end up dying first. Whereas the person with, I don't know, who's just got a pickaxe and one gun or whatever, maybe he just got rubbish loot and was dealt awful cards, he can still end up coming first. It may be a lot more difficult, but if he's got the skills and the knowledge to maneuver his way around and utilize what he's been given, what he's been handed, he can still be successful, he can still be the last man standing. Like, I think that's a really good analogy because it's so true. At the end of the day, you may be dealt the best cards, you may, I don't know, grew up in a millionaire family, went to private school, all of that stuff. And that same person can still end up being a failure because they didn't play the cards that they were dealt effectively. Whereas there may be someone else who, I don't know, grew up in a poor area or whatever, and they may end up being a billionaire. Like, it's all about playing the cards that you're dealt effectively, utilizing what position you've been handed with and making the most of it, because life's not fair. There's going to be so many people who grew up in a better position than you, and it's very easy to just think, oh, it's not fair, like of course they're going to be more successful. But again, it's all about playing the cards that you're dealt. So you may know Iman Gadzhi or Gadzhi, a YouTuber, business owner. He's a perfect example of playing the cards that he was dealt and using them to make the most out of his situation. So his father was an alcoholic, abusive. His mother got out of that situation from when he was very young. So he grew up in a single parent household for the most part. Watched a video of his, and his stepdad was also a terrible guy. For the most part of his teenage years, he grew up poor, single mom who was working like 3 jobs or something like that. You're gonna think like the average person in that situation is just gonna be, I don't know, unsuccessful or whatever, right? Well, no, because he played the cards that he was dealt effectively. He knew what position that he was in and he was like, cool, how can I make the most of what I've been handed, the situation that I've been put in? He didn't think, oh, life's unfair, so I can't do anything to get myself out of this situation. No, because then you lose control, then you've lost. He still was able to work hard, grind, hustle for years and years and years on end, and look at where he is now. The cards that he was dealt was worse than the average person or whatever, right? And now he's above those other people because he's got the knowledge, he's got the skills, so he was able to utilize the cards effectively. Hamza is another example, big self-improvement YouTuber. When he was growing up, his father was like an alcoholic or something, so he'd get beaten a lot, abused, all of that kind of stuff. And also because of his ethnicity, he'd get bullied. He used to think that he was less than. He'd even have people throwing eggs at his house. Like, he'd get a lot of harassment because of his skin, what he looked like. So again, the average person in that situation would think, I've been dealt awful cards, how on earth am I gonna make use of this to put myself in a better situation? At first, he was not doing anything with his life right. He was not utilizing the cards that he was dealt properly, but then he turned it around for himself. And look where he is now.
March 2023, and in this month, I've made over $100,000.
Although it may be harder to get to where you want to be if you weren't dealt the best cards, it doesn't mean you can't get to where you want to be. It just might take a little longer, it might be a bit more difficult. But that's where the perseverance, the consistency, the discipline comes in, right? So this is really important. If you feel like you've been dealt awful cards in comparison to, I don't know, your friends or people you see on social media, just know that as long as you have the skills, the knowledge, the hard work, the dedication, you can still become successful, you can still get to where you want to be. You may even end up doing better than the people who were dealt the better cards in the beginning. It's all about how you maneuver them, how you make good use of them, make do with what you've got. Even when you're literally playing cards, blackjack, the cards you're dealt are random, right? You can't pick the cards you get. They're shuffled and then dealt, and you may have been given an awful hand in comparison to someone who has a great hand. But it's about how you use the cards that you were dealt to end up winning the game. You can beat someone who's got a better hand than you. It may just take a bit more skill, a bit more knowledge, a bit more experience, but you can still beat them. You can still win. So yeah, play the cards you're dealt and use them, make the most of them, and become the best version of yourself. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.